General Motors' hometown of Detroit. There are more questions than answers. Now the city is officially bankrupt, but the question is what happens next and how will the city recover? Liling Tan reports.
Even as Detroit embarks on the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history, there appears to be little pockets of hope in what was once America's fourth largest city. For example, the city is hiring more firefighters and investors are snatching up cheap properties.
What once cost in dollars $100,000 is now a fraction of that price with regard to land, buildings, and residential dwellings, which opens up a major land grab, which is taking place now.
And as the automakers that once drove Detroit's economy make their comeback, Ford Motor Company has announced a hiring spree with many jobs in the Detroit area. But that growth isn't being felt by the average Detroiter.
It's indeed the case that the auto industry since 2009 has been increasingly profitable, and they've put back some of the employment that they shed in the 2007 to 2009 period. Unfortunately for the city of Detroit, most of that employment is for people who do not live within the city of Detroit. These are highly skilled folks typically that are being reemployed, or at least folks that have modest skill levels compared to the skills of the generic Detroiter.
Gelster believes the solutions to Detroit's problems lie in its past, just after World War II, when the city was dealt a double blow from the auto industry and the federal government. After the war, automakers began to rebuild their facilities on the outskirts of the city, cratering the city's tax revenue base. Other manufacturers followed suit, leaving behind abandoned factories. At that same time, government subsidies for suburban development and for single-family home buyers drew residents out of the city of Detroit, reducing what was once a population of nearly 2 million people to just 700,000 today. Detroit now has about 20,000 manufacturing jobs, just 6% of what it was 60 years ago. Liling Tan, CCTV, Detroit.
For more, Kyle Bazzy, president of Benzinga, joins us live from Detroit. Welcome to Biz Asia America, Kyle. And I want to start by asking you these earnings out of the auto companies. They're respectable, and I think a lot of folks are asking, if Detroit declined because of the weakness in the auto industry, and since the bailouts and since the government assistance that things have gotten significantly better for the auto industry, why have they not seen that in the rest of the city?
That's a great question, and thanks for having me, Phil. We are so closely tied to the autos industry here in Detroit, and that's obviously no secret, but it goes really, really deep. It's not just GM and Ford and Chrysler. It extends through all of our suppliers and the towns that have the restaurants and their local communities that are tied to that one plant. Although we're seeing the auto industries coming back, it doesn't mean that their headcounts are coming back. So we have GM that reported that they lost less money than they did the year or the quarter previously in Europe, but that doesn't mean that we're hiring more in Detroit. So although the auto industries are on the right track again, they're really just improving their bottom lines. They're not increasing the actual amount of workers that we did before the actual crisis itself. So that's playing a large role into why Detroit is still, as it was just said, went from 2 million people and we're down to 700,000 now. And those
One
jobs
of the
are
great
obviously
technological advances over the past decade has been sort of this just-in-time inventory, the use of robotics. I mean, that alone has taken out a lot of jobs that would have honestly been there. Robots have replaced people, for that matter. Has there been any studies done as to how many jobs might have been lost to that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I don't think that improvements in robotics is really what's to blame here. We're looking at actually onshoring because of that. We're bringing the jobs back to not only Michigan, but the country because we are so advanced in that technology. The studies are really looking at how much we've lost because of the inefficiencies of the companies. And obviously with GM and Chrysler needing the bailout, that was proven that the companies were not able to handle the downcline, and now with the growth, we're hoping that those were remedied. So I think with robotics and technology, that's actually bringing the jobs back to the plants and the engineers that we have here in Detroit.
Okay, I don't want to pick on just GM because Ford and Chrysler and GM, they were the big three automakers there. But Dan Ackerson, the CEO of GM, says it's simply a matter of macroeconomics when he was asked about why the auto industry isn't healthier. In your view, why isn't the auto industry healthier in the United States? Or are we completely wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question. And of course, Dan Dickerson's going to say that because he doesn't want to admit that his inefficiencies as a management team is what caused the decline. Look, the fact of the matter is, we're now buying a lot of cars in the United States. We're now seeing improvements overseas. So the question would be, why do we have such fewer jobs, right? That shows that the plants grew and there was major inefficiencies and the profit margins were squeezed quite heavily. So when you're looking at it like that, it's the macro obviously had a part of the play, but it wasn't the whole play. And now you're looking at two companies, Chrysler and GM, that took the bailout, but why didn't Ford? Ford was able to restructure. Ford was able to be a little bit more nimble. So you had a company that was able to fight that trend in the macro. Why couldn't GM and Chrysler do the same thing would be the question that I would have.
Now, we don't have the CEO on today, but I'm imagining if the CEO was here, he would defend the company and say they have done a lot to restructure the company. They've renegotiated contracts with unions. They've tried to negotiate deals, not just in Detroit, but with different states around the region. Is this possibly just a natural progression of an industry that ultimately diversified its manufacturing base outside the city of Detroit, and for that matter, the state of Michigan?
Yeah, and it is, because you're seeing that restructuring, and I do tip my hat to them. I mean, they're paying back their debt actually ahead of time for GM and Chrysler. So obviously they're doing the right things that they are now. But being able to restructure around the city of Detroit, and I think that's the point we're really getting here to, is we have the engineers here, we have the manufacturing here. It's a no-brainer for these companies to be able to open up shop because the entire foundation's already laid for them to come back in as they start to grow again.
Kyle Bazzy, president of Benzinga, we would love to have you back on again at Biz Asia America. So many questions, and there's still so many answers that we just don't know yet. Thank you very much for joining us live from Detroit.